A 3-4-year-old man traveling alone to meet an online date vanished while crossing the border between Texas and Mexico in the summer of 2019. Authorities initially claimed he must have changed his mind or started a new life, a clean break, no crime suspected. But there was no evidence, no bank activity, no confirmed sightings, no body. 12 months later, a routine audit of international border records exposed something deeply unsettling. His passport showed an exit, but no corresponding entry anywhere on Earth. And then, investigators noticed the timestamp. It occurred after he had already vanished. The decision didn't come suddenly. It arrived quietly, like a door left open too long, letting in a draft he could no longer ignore. At 34, his life had settled into something predictable. Alarm at 6:30. Coffee gone cold by the time he remembered it, the same commute, the same empty apartment at night. Friends described him as dependable, gentle, forgettable in the way kind people sometimes are. No enemies, no debts, no reason to run. That's why, when he told them he was traveling to meet someone, it felt different. "She's real," he said with a small laugh, sitting across from his sister at a diner, fingers wrapped tightly around a chipped mug. "I know how it sounds. But we've been talking for months." His sister raised an eyebrow. "Talking, or actually seeing?" He hesitated, just a beat too long. "Talking," he admitted. "But it's serious." The woman's name, at least the one she used, was familiar to him now. They met on a dating app late one night, the kind of connection that felt accidental but quickly became routine. Messages every morning, long voice notes at night. She listened. She asked questions no one else did. When he talked about feeling invisible, she didn't reassure him she understood. But there were gaps. She never video called. Claimed her camera was broken. Her location shifted subtly over time. First one city, then another, just across the border. When he asked, she brushed it off. "I move around. It's complicated." Normally, he would have walked away. Everyone who knew him said that. He was cautious to a fault. But loneliness rewrites rules. The plan, according to him, was simple. Drive south. Cross the border. Meet her in person. Stay a few days. Come back. A week. Max. He told his parents on the phone. "I'll text when I get there." His mother didn't like it. She never said so directly, but he could hear it in her silence. "Just be careful," she finally said. "And don't trust anyone too quickly." He smiled, rolling a sock into his duffel bag. "I won't." The night before he left, his apartment looked unusually bare. Bed made. Trash taken out. A small detail later investigators would note, though at the time it meant nothing. He packed light clothes, toiletries, passport. He paused over his phone, rereading the last message she'd sent. "Can't wait, everything's going to change after this." He typed a response. Deleted it, typed again. "Leaving early. See you soon." Sent. There was one message he didn't mention to anyone. It arrived minutes later. "When you cross, don't talk too much. I'll tell you where to go." He stared at the screen longer than he meant to. His thumb hovered, then locked the phone and slid it into his pocket. The morning he left, the sky was low and gray, the air heavy with humidity. He hugged his sister a little longer than usual. "Text me when you're across," she said. "I will." He got into his car, waved once through the windshield, and drove away. Hours later, somewhere on the long stretch of road leading south, his phone buzzed again. Another message from her. Short, direct, "I'm watching your location." He slowed slightly, heart thudding not with fear, he told himself, but with nerves. Anticipation. By the time he reached the border, the sun was already sinking, casting long shadows across the checkpoint lanes. Engines idled. People waited. He picked up his phone one last time and typed a message he never sent. And that was the last moment anyone could say for certain where he truly was. By the time he reached the border, daylight was bleeding out of the sky. The checkpoint stretched ahead of him like a slow-moving organism, lanes of cars crawling forward, red brake lights flickering on and off, engines humming in the thick evening heat. He wiped his palms on his jeans and rolled his shoulders, trying to release a tension he hadn't noticed building until now. His phone buzzed. A message from her. "Stay in the right lane. Don't change it." He glanced up. 3 lanes split ahead, left congested with trucks, middle barely moving, right flowing faster. He eased into the right lane, heart ticking a little faster than the traffic. He told himself, this was normal. She lived here. She knew the border. Still, something about being guided from a distance made his stomach tighten. He called his sister as the car in front of him rolled forward. She answered on the second ring. "You almost there?" she asked. "Yeah," he said, watching a border officer gesture a sedan through. "Just waiting to cross." Her voice softened. "Text me when you're on the other side." "I will. Promise." There was a pause, the kind that comes when someone wants to say something but doesn't know how. "You sound weird," she said finally. He forced a laugh. "Just tired." They hung up, and he didn't notice his hands shaking until he reached for his passport. Cameras lined the checkpoint high poles, unblinking lenses, capturing every license plate, every face. Later, investigators would review that footage frame by frame. They would see him inch forward. They would see him check his phone again. They would see him look over his shoulder, once, then twice, like someone searching for a familiar face in a crowd that refused to materialize. But there was no sound on that footage. No way to hear the breath he took when his phone buzzed again. After the checkpoint, "Keep driving. Don't stop." The officer barely looked at him. Passport stamped. A nod. The barrier lifted. And just like that, he crossed. According to official records, that was the last verified moment of his journey. But reality, as his family would later learn, didn't follow paperwork. On the other side, the road narrowed. Streetlights flickered on, casting uneven pools of yellow across the asphalt. Vendors packed up carts along the roadside. Music drifted from somewhere distant, muffled and indistinct. He slowed, scanning for signs, for anything that matched the vague directions she'd given over weeks of messages. His phone buzzed again. "Good. Keep going." 10 minutes. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. He checked his signal. Still there. Weak, but alive. He typed back. "Where exactly am I meeting you?" The message showed as delivered. No reply. A gas station appeared ahead, bright, familiar, safe. Instinctively, he flicked on his turn signal. His phone vibrated immediately. "No. Don't stop." He hesitated at the intersection, heart pounding loud enough to feel in his ears. A horn blared behind him. He straightened the wheel and kept driving. That was the last outgoing message ever recovered from his phone. The final incoming message arrived 3 minutes later. "I see you." There was no reply, no call, no GPS ping after that moment. When his car was eventually located days later parked on a quiet roadside miles past the checkpoint, the engine was cold. The doors were locked. His phone was gone. So was his passport. Border officials initially insisted nothing unusual had happened. Thousands crossed daily. People disappeared by choice all the time. But when one officer was asked months later if he remembered the man, he paused. "Yeah," he said slowly. He kept looking at his phone, like he was waiting for permission. The surveillance cameras recorded him crossing the line. What they didn't record was where he went once he believed someone was watching. And somewhere in the dark beyond the checkpoint, his signal vanished mid-route, mid-journey, mid-life, as if the road had simply swallowed him whole. The first 48 hours were filled with excuses. Poor signal, missed messages, a dead phone battery somewhere unfamiliar. His family clung to those explanations because they were survivable. They meant inconvenience, not loss. By day 3, the excuses stopped working. His sister stood in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, staring at the same unmoving dot on a printed map. The location data ended near a stretch of road with no name, just a thin gray line cutting through beige nothingness. "He always texts back," she said, more to herself than the officer on the line. "Even if it's just an emoji." When the missing persons report was filed, the questions came fast and cold. Was he depressed? Did he talk about starting over? Any trouble with the law? No. His parents answered again and again. He was happy. Nervous, but happy. The responding detective listened politely, typing notes that sounded non-committal even as they were spoken aloud. "Cross, border cases are complicated," he said. "Adults have the right to disappear." Disappear. The word landed heavy in the room. Authorities contacted border officials. The response was immediate and unhelpful. He crossed legally. Alone, without incident. No alarms. No flags. No reason to detain him. The woman the reason for the trip was harder to pin down. Her dating profile no longer existed. The username returned nothing. Messages stopped syncing halfway through the conversation history, as if the thread had been cut cleanly with a blade. The phone number he'd saved under her name rang once, then disconnected forever. "It's like she never existed," his sister whispered, scrolling endlessly through cached screenshots she'd taken from his phone backups. Investigators shrugged. Fake profiles weren't crimes. People lied online all the time. Weeks passed. His car was found abandoned along a secondary road, dust already settling into the tires. Nothing inside suggested a struggle. No blood, no damage. Just a receipt on the floorboard from a gas station near the border, time-stamped less than an hour after his recorded crossing. His passport was gone, so he kept traveling, the detective concluded. Probably met someone else, or didn't want to be found. The case file grew thin. Search efforts were minimal. A few calls. A few emails to agencies across the border that never responded. Without evidence of a crime, there was nothing to justify more. By the third month, the tone changed. If he wanted contact, he'd reach out, one officer said gently, as if explaining a hard truth to a child. His mother stopped setting a place for him at dinner. His father checked the driveway at night anyway. The detective assigned to the case was reassigned. The new one skimmed the file and sighed. No confirmed sightings, no financial activity, no digital footprint after the crossing, he summarized. That usually means one of two things. His sister leaned forward. Which is? He planned this, the detective said. Or he's somewhere we're not going to find him. The case was marked inactive 6 months after the report was filed. No press conference, no announcement. Just a quiet change in status inside a system no family ever sees. Officially, he wasn't dead, but he wasn't being looked for anymore either. On the anniversary of his disappearance, his sister called the border office one last time, hoping for anything that had been missed. A clerk pulled up the record, scanned it, and paused. "Huh," he murmured. "What?" she asked sharply. "Nothing," he said after a moment. "Just strange how clean it is." Clean meant empty. No errors, no loose ends. A perfect disappearance. She hung up feeling worse than before, unaware that buried in another system no one had thought to check, yet something was quietly waiting. A record that didn't belong, a timestamp that shouldn't exist. And proof that he hadn't just vanished once, he had vanished twice. The discovery didn't happen during a renewed search. It happened because someone was bored. A year after the case went inactive, a customs compliance analyst sat alone in a fluorescent-lit office, reviewing archived border data as part of a routine system audit. Thousands of records scrolled past her screen, names, numbers, timestamps blending into one another. Most audits ended the same way. Nothing found, nothing flagged. Until one line refused to behave. The name wasn't familiar to her, but the sequence was wrong. She leaned closer, rereading the entry. Passport number. Nationality. Exit confirmation. Date. 11 months after the man had been reported missing. "That can't be right," she muttered, fingers already moving across the keyboard. The system showed a clean outbound record, no errors, no warnings. According to the database, the man had exited the country long after his disappearance, passing through a controlled border checkpoint without incident. But there was a problem. There was no corresponding entry anywhere else. No inbound record. No airline manifest. No neighboring country acknowledging receipt. It was as if the system recorded him leaving into nowhere. She cross-checked manually. Same result. The timestamp made her pause. It wasn't approximate. It wasn't rounded. It was exact to the second. And it occurred at a time when, officially, the man no longer existed in any active system. Her supervisor listened with mild interest as she explained, arms folded, coffee cooling on the desk. "Probably a clerical error," he said. "Old data migrating between systems. Except biometric confirmation is missing," she replied. That got his attention. Since 2018, all outbound crossings required biometric verification, facial scan, fingerprint, something tying the physical person to the passport. This record had none. Instead, it showed a manual override code, a rarely used administrative function reserved for system failures or special clearances. "Who authorized it?" he asked. She shook her head. That field's blank. The case number attached to the passport was old. Closed. Inactive. The supervisor exhaled slowly. Reopen it. When investigators contacted the family, the call came out of nowhere. His sister answered, bracing for disappointment. Instead, she heard words she hadn't expected to hear again. "We need to ask you some follow-up questions." Her heart raced. "You found him?" "No," the agent said carefully. "But we found a record." They explained the border log, the phantom exit, the missing biometrics. "So he was alive?" she asked. There was a pause on the line. "We don't know," the agent admitted. "But someone wanted the system to think he was." Investigators retraced every step of his digital existence. Bank accounts remained untouched. Social media silent. No tax records. No hospital visits. No employment. Nothing after the day he vanished. And yet the system insisted he crossed again. When analysts mapped the override code, they found something worse. It had been used before, not often, but enough to notice a pattern. Several names. Different years. Different borders. All adults. All traveling alone. All meeting someone they'd never met in person. All disappeared. A junior investigator stared at the screen, jaw tight. "This isn't an error," he said. "It's housekeeping." Someone was cleaning records. The question was why. When the family asked what it meant, no one could give a straight answer. It could indicate identity misuse, one official suggested, or delayed processing, another offered weakly. But behind closed doors, the tone was different. "If he were dead," an investigator said quietly, "there'd be no reason to move his passport record." That night, his sister opened her laptop and searched the woman's name again. This time, she didn't search dating apps. She searched missing persons forums, and found a post from another family, in another state, describing the same messages, the same instructions, the same final words. "I see you." The year no one was looking had allowed something to keep working undisturbed. And now that it had been noticed, it was already too late to pretend the disappearance was accidental. Whatever happened to him hadn't ended at the border. It had been processed. The deeper investigators dug, the more deliberate the absence became. At first, it was treated like a technical mystery: logs, timestamps, override permissions. But soon the language shifted. Analysts stopped saying error and started saying removal, because one thing should have existed no matter what: biometrics. His sister sat across from two federal investigators in a windowless room, hands clenched together as they explained it slowly, carefully, like the truth might shatter if dropped too fast. "Since 2018, one of them said, sliding a document across the table, "every outbound border crossing requires biometric verification. Face scan, fingerprint, or both. There are no exceptions for private citizens." She stared at the highlighted section. "But his record has none," the investigator finished. "Not missing, not corrupted, never collected." That was impossible, unless the person crossing hadn't been there, or the system had been told not to look. They traced the override code next. It wasn't generic. It belonged to a narrow authorization tier used for diplomatic contingencies, system outages, or intelligence operations. Each use should have generated a secondary approval trail. This one didn't. "It's like someone reached into the system with gloves on," an analyst said later, rubbing his eyes. "No fingerprints, no echoes." The list of similar cases grew to 7. 7 people who vanished after traveling to meet someone they'd never seen in person. 7 passports quietly marked as having exited months later. 7 records scrubbed just enough to close administrative loops: insurance, immigration status, unresolved flags. Someone wasn't hiding the disappearances. They were finalizing them. Investigators revisited the online profiles tied to the cases, this time with federal resources. The woman's name changed across platforms, but the writing style didn't. Neither did the cadence of her messages. Short, directive, reassuring without warmth. Always watching, always guiding. A cyber analyst finally found something: a reused image fragment embedded deep in metadata, linked to a dormant server overseas. When they pulled the thread, more profiles unraveled. Different faces. Samma digital skeleton. "This isn't catfishing," one agent said. "It's recruitment." "But for what?" another asked. No one answered. The most disturbing realization came late one night. when an investigator reread the exit record and frowned. "Why mark them as having left?" he asked aloud. "If you wanted them gone, why leave a trail at all?" Silence followed. Then someone said it quietly. "Because missing people get searched for. Departed people don't." The room went still. By marking the vanished as having officially exited, systems downstream stopped looking. International alerts never triggered. Certain databases closed automatically. In bureaucratic terms, the problem resolved itself. A clean ending without a body. His sister was told only part of this. Enough to frighten her, not enough to explain anything. "So where is he?" she asked finally, voice breaking. The investigator didn't lie. He just didn't answer. Weeks later, a memo circulated internally recommending the case be folded into a larger, ongoing investigation. No details. No timeline. When the family requested access to the new findings, they were denied for national security reasons. The last thing the investigator said to her, as he walked her to the door, felt less official. "Whatever happened," he said, lowering his voice, "was organized. And it wasn't meant to be seen." That night, she lay awake, replaying his final messages in her mind. "I'm here. I see you." She finally understood why the system needed him to vanish twice. Once in the real world, and once on paper, because whatever took him didn't want him found. It wanted him accounted for. On paper, the case was alive again. In reality, it was already being buried. His sister learned this slowly, through tone rather than words. Emails unanswered. Calls redirected. Meetings postponed without explanation. The investigation still existed, she was told, but it now belonged to people who couldn't talk about it. "It's under review," became the phrase. Polite, impenetrable. The border record was never corrected. The phantom exit remained in the system, immutable as fact. According to official databases, her brother had left the country on a quiet weekday morning, 11 months after he'd last been seen alive. Where he went was irrelevant. He had gone. She requested the biometric logs one final time, hoping for a mistake, some overlooked file, some human error that could be fixed if only the right person cared enough. The response came weeks later. No biometric data exists for the transaction. Not missing, not corrupted, does not exist. The implications settled over her like dust. At home, his parents moved through the house carefully, as if loud sounds might disturb something fragile and unseen. His room stayed the same. His jacket still hung by the door. The world had learned how to continue without him, but their house hadn't. On the second anniversary of his disappearance, his mother lit a candle and placed it by the window. "For him," she said, "in case he finds his way back." His sister didn't correct her. She had stopped believing in returns. What haunted her most wasn't the possibility that he was dead. It was the precision. The idea that systems designed to track, protect, and verify had instead been used to erase. That someone had taken the time to close his loop. Late one night, unable to sleep, she logged into an old cloud backup and scrolled through fragments of his digital life photos, half-written notes, saved locations. In a folder she didn't recognize, she found a single screenshot, a message she'd never seen before. "If anything feels wrong, don't cross. Once you do, I can't help you." No timestamp, no sender name, just the words. She stared at it until dawn. Authorities would later insist there was no evidence linking his disappearance to any broader network. No charges were filed, no alerts issued. The override code was quietly restricted. The audit that uncovered the anomaly was sealed. Officially, the system worked. Unofficially, nothing changed. Other families would come forward in the years that followed, each with eerily similar stories. Each would be told their case was unique. Each would eventually hear the same phrase: "No further action at this time." Today, if you search his name, you'll find two truths living side by side. One says he vanished while chasing love across a border, never to be seen again. The other says he left the country months later, exactly as recorded. Both are accepted. Neither explains what happened to the man who packed a small bag, trusted a voice on a screen, and crossed a line believing someone was waiting for him. He vanished once in the real world, and once more inside the system meant to prove he existed at all. And that second disappearance may be the one that ensures he is never found.